Good evening, everyone. The meeting of the Hillsborough County Charter Review Board is now called to order. Can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The Charter Review Board has established a period at each of its regular meetings to allow citizens to speak on issues related to the Hillsborough County Charter. First priority will be given to citizens signed in to speak regarding items on today's agenda. The board respects the rights of citizens to express their opinions and concerns. However, the board requests that citizens present their concerns in a respectful manner in order to maintain a polite atmosphere where all individuals are respected. When addressing the board, please state your name and speak clearly into the microphone. Up to 3 minutes are allowed for each speaker. Our first speaker today is Mr. Mark Nash of Lithia, Florida.
Likely your only speaker today is Mark Nash from Lithia, Florida. Well, good evening. This has been kind of a thing for me since I got involved in the Hillsborough County government 15 or so years ago. I played a role in getting Commissioner Kevin Beckner elected in 2008, and then I was his chief of staff for his first year and a half in office, and the 2010 Charter Review Board took place while I was with Commissioner Beckner. You guys are really lucky. This is a phenomenal place to be an agent for change, adjustments, rebalancing of the living document that is the Hillsborough County Charter. Perhaps you don't know this, but when Hillsborough County became a county in 1834, it went all the way to Gainesville, Florida, to the north. Lake Okeechobee was its southernmost border, and it almost hit the Atlantic Ocean on the other side of the state. Hillsborough County was a quarter of the landmass of the state of Florida when it became Florida's 18th county. But we evolved. And today, 1,200 square miles, 1.5 million people. Can you imagine trying to govern a geography the size of what Hillsborough County was at its inception? But like I said, we evolved. And you all have the tremendous responsibility, opportunity to help the document that guides this county to evolve as well. I'll break into those details down the road in this process, but I'm just really excited for you all. You have a chance to do something really meaningful here for the people of this county, and there's some opportunities here that you all are the boss here. This is you're the show. You can bypass the board to bring things forward on the ballot. The county attorney, Mary Helen, and I were just chatting that you will actually have the ability to perhaps put something on the ballot this year, this election year. So anyway, you guys yield a big stick, and I'm excited at the opportunity before us, and there'll be more to offer as we go down the road here. But I just wanted to say hi and good luck.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nash. Additionally, a public comment form is available on the Charter Review County page, which is located at www.hcflgov.net/charter. All online submissions submitted before 5 p.m. on the day of the meeting will be read into the record that night. There were no online public comments. So I'd just like to start by welcoming everybody back to our second meeting of the year. Glad to see everybody here. Hope everybody is doing well. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes if everyone has read them and has no questions about them. If not, we can take a moment to review the minutes to make sure they're in order from the last meeting.
Motion to approve minutes. Second.
We have a motion. It's been properly seconded. Is there any unreadiness? Yes. All right. All in favor of approval of the minutes from the February 4, 2020 meeting by sign of aye? Aye. Any opposed? Unanimous. All right. Moving right along, we are going to have a presentation from our Deputy County Attorney and General Counsel, Attorney Mary Helen Farris, on the legal representation of the CRB and timelines for action.
Yes. Good evening. It's so nice to meet you. I had an unavoidable conflict for the last one. Again, I'm Mary Helen Farris. I practice mainly in the areas of charter, election work, which has been crazy sometimes. I do ethics, sunshine law, public records, and anything that's icky or controversial pretty much lands on my desk. I'd like to talk first about the legal representation. The very first Charter Review Board was in 1990, and they had outside counsel. Starting in 1995, I've been the counsel for the Charter Review Board, which is at no cost to the county, but it's totally up to this board to make a decision if they want the county attorney's office to represent them or to try to get outside counsel. So that's one decision I would like for you to discuss and make. The other representation issue is, in the past, near the beginning, it doesn't have to be right at the beginning, the board has directed me to select conflict counsel. Ken Tinkler did it. He used to work for the county attorney's office. He was co-counsel with me at the 2010 Charter Review Board, and the reason I say that is just in case the board wants to change the county attorney's paragraph and provisions in the charter. It's just a safe thing to do, but that's really at your discretion. You can just see if something comes up, and then we could make that move. That's really up to the board. Okay, timelines for action. This board is in the same position as the 2010 board because there's a general election this year. So you could put something on the ballot this year. The deadline, I think, is August 26th, there around, so that kind of gives you a time frame of how quickly you might need to move to get something to the supervisor, and I will take care of doing that. And then you will still be in session until February of next year. So like the 2010 Charter Review Board, they had proposals on the ballot in 2010 and in 2012. So that kind of gives you a time frame of what you're working with. Especially like if you want to talk about, as Mark said, the makeup of the board, just so that you know, in 2021, we will be redistricting the county commission districts as required by the charter. So that's going to take place anyway. So if you're going to do something like that, you might want to consider doing that first because we're going to be redistricting anyway. That's just a suggestion or whatever you want to do. Does anybody have any? Okay.
So, okay. Sorry about that. That was pretty important what you just said, and I'm not sure I caught all of it.
Okay.
Redistricting is its own process, right? But I don't understand the relationship between what this board can do that could affect redistricting.
Well, maybe I wasn't clear enough. What I was saying is that if this board wants to change the makeup of the county commission districts, if you want to do that and put it on the 2020 ballot, if it's approved, we're going to redistrict anyway. So we're already planning to redistrict, so if you're going to change them, you might want to do that. That doesn't prevent you from putting something on the 2022 ballot, but if you change the commission districts, then we're going to have to redistrict again.
But is it possible that wording within the charter could affect how the redistricting is done?
Yes, it could.
Okay.
Yes, it could.
Would an example of that be if we decide, let's say that we want all separate districts and not
Single member,
countywide? Then that's one of the things that would, I mean, I'm not saying that we are, but
Right.
that is an example of something that would impact districting.
Correct. So then if it's approved on this November, then we would redraw the lines in accordance with what was approved. Are there any more questions? Okay, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Stewart?
Would this be the appropriate time to make a motion to accept the county attorney as the board's counsel?
Yes.
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. I think we also have to show your sign of affirmation with a hand so that the clerk can count these things up. So,
Is it worth some discussion before?
yeah, is anyone in favor of discussing this issue? Now, keep in mind, I did have a meeting with staff last Friday, and I think one of the things that we talked about was in the event that there's anything that's controversial, we may need to go and bring in outside counsel on a pro bono basis. So if there's anything that affects, like, for example, the county attorney's office or any of the functions that they're over, we would need to conflict out this office. So just wanted to reiterate that. Ms. Yates?
And by accepting the county attorney now, that doesn't change us being able to do that in the future if something should come up, right?
No, that would not preclude us from doing that. Great question. Any other questions
And
or
there's no
discussion?
cost, is there going to be a cost to the, if outside of the county?
No
cost to us?
No additional cost to the taxpayer.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I didn't have a particular position in asking the question, but it's obviously an important consideration when you think of the fact that we could be affecting things that the county attorney could have some interest in. And so I'm ready to go along with accepting the use of the county attorney's office under the understanding that we'll have a discussion when it comes to those items that may be important to have an independent point of view.
Absolutely. Representative Fick?
I would like to make a request of the members. I have a hearing loss, and if you don't speak close to the microphone, I don't get what you say, and I might misinterpret it.
Any other comments for discussion? All right, are we ready for the question? All in favor by sign of hands? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we'll move right along. Usually when you hear a legal review, I figure it was going to take 25 minutes, but it didn't. Thank you very much. We would like to discuss the methodology for conducting the charter review. My understanding is in the past, we have gone through the charter section by section to have a thorough review if anybody has comments or changes that they would like to see made, and then we bring those up meeting by meeting to discuss those thoroughly. On your desk and electronically, everyone should have received a copy of the Home Rule Charter with amendments that were made. Those amendments have been color-coded with the timeframes in which those changes were made to this as well, which is really a very good thing. So thank you very much, staff, for making those changes on our behalf here. So it's kind of color-coded so you can quickly just see when changes were put into effect. The reasoning isn't necessarily here, but I'm sure because staff is here, we can always ask the question about why a change may have occurred on the charter when it did. But what we have discussed, and this is up to the board, is if any member has something they want to bring up that the board should consider, we'll bring it forward at any one of these meetings, and then we'll vote on whether we should move forward with it and hand it over to staff to do the research and bring back to us for us to have a formal discussion and an actual vote in the subsequent meeting. That is what we talked about. I'm open to any ideas if anybody else has any suggestions in how we should do this.
Mr. Chairman,
Representative.
I'd like to have a discussion on the county internal auditor.
Absolutely.
That's added subsequent to the, that position was added subsequently to the initial charter. And my questions at the time, and my question still is this position necessary? And I'm not sure this is our job to make this assessment, but is there a better way to do it than this?
Okay.
And that is our job.
So we're going to hold on that for a moment.
Okay.
And I just want to close out on this section of the methodology and see if anybody has anything before we come back to that. Are we all good with this? It's just my suggestion. Yes, Mr. Mueller.
Could you, what was your suggestion? I mean, how were you looking at doing it? What was your methodology?
Absolutely. So going forward on the agenda, what we'll have is a section that's called New Issues, which will allow each of us to bring forward any kind of change or anything you want to review. And then we will vote on whether we want to move forward on getting more information on that as a board. We will hand that over to the staff to bring us back the language, if there's language or information. for the next meeting, and then we will discuss at the subsequent meeting and vote at the subsequent meeting on no potential changes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
when you say the subsequent meeting, so it will always be the next meeting, or are we going to give the staff enough time to be able to possibly look into more meaty issues that may possibly pop up?
I'm going to defer to the county deputy attorney.
Having done this is my 6th charter review board. I've have so many different versions of the charter. I can make sure that whatever proposal you want to do, and I can't promise, but that I should be able to bring back some language for your consideration. And it may take, if you have a lot of changes, I may have to go back and make those changes to the initial. But I feel confident that we can do a month turnaround.
Can I ask a little clarification?
Yes, you recognize.
It sounded like what she wanted to do is not necessarily at the next meeting come up with language, but have information on, and a discussion about the internal auditor and how other people do it. So, could there be times where maybe we just have
absolutely.
discussion on and don't come up at the next meeting
Absolutely.
with language? It's another
Because,
meeting.
right, in your rules of order, to tell me to draft something takes a majority vote. So when you get to the point where you're kind of clear on the direction you want to give me, then you would make that vote, and then I would come back. But it may be several discussions before we finally decide what language I need to draft.
Mr. Chairman, that was to my point, exactly. I wasn't proposing any language or any change. I simply think it's something that we should be aware of, more aware than we are right now.
Agreed. All right. Representative Shaw.
So would we be going section by section through the charter in addition to what you're proposing as well? Is
Yes,
that
sir.
the deal? Okay, thanks.
Absolutely. All great questions of process. All right, well, as chairman, I don't want to make a motion, but if somebody wants to send a motion out for how we will conduct the new business or the methodology, I'll accept it at this time.
This is Sean Shaw. I'll make a motion that we adopt the methodologies laid out by the chairman for how we conduct new business.
And I'll second Stacy Yates.
We have a motion. It's been properly seconded. Any discussion, any further discussion? All right, all in favor by sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. With that said, at the last meeting, we were handed our rules and we had an opportunity to review the rules. And I apologize that it's not here on your regular meeting agenda, but we should have a new business, new issue section that talks about the rules that we wanted to adopt. This is the county staff has come back with the cleaning up of some of these rules, and I'm going to defer to Ms.
Sure.
Farris to explain.
In the rules, and they are based on the Board of County Commissioners Rules of Order, in some places it referred to members present, a majority of members present, and in other places it was a simple a majority of the board. I consulted with our attorney, who's our parliamentarian expert, and basically he said under Robert's rules, they mean the same thing, but we just made it consistent throughout the document. So it's not really a substantive change, but it is now consistent throughout your rules.
Any questions for the Deputy County Attorney? All right. Any discussion on the rules that are in front of us? Vice Chair?
Yes, I just have one other item that I saw in Rule 11. The last sentence, where it basically said, board members may request that items be placed on the agenda by filing written requests with the chairman via staff 1 week preceding the next board meeting. I thought we may want to add staff at least 1 week preceding.
All right. Like it.
So.
That's fine.
Okay. I don't think we need a motion to adopt that change. Everybody seems to be shaking their head. It's just a language, stylistic change here. All right, wonderful. All right. Any other comments, questions? We'll entertain a motion to adopt the rules.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Johnson and a second by Dr. Fox. Any unreadiness? All in favor of adopting the rules for the 2020 Charter Review Board by sign of aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Let's go back to Representative Figg's comment on the county internal auditor. This would be under new business for the next meeting. So Representative Figg, did you want to elaborate any further on what you'd like to see the county staff bring back to us at the next meeting?
Yes, I'd like to know exactly what the audit position was in the past for the county. Thank you. And what exactly the new auditor does that's different from what we had in the past.
Mr. Chair?
I'd be happy to bring back kind of a whole timeline in history. The Charter Review Board had the first internal auditor. There were some things that weren't working that good, so the board made some changes. But I can come back with a timeline, exactly what steps and why. And if you would like, I can get with Peggy Caskey, who is the internal auditor. And if you would like some information on her department, her size, her budget, they have an audit plan. I can give you things of that nature that gives you a better idea of what her shop does.
Thank you.
Ms. Stewart.
I'd also like to hear from the, what is the audit committee? They have an advisory committee?
They do.
I'd perhaps at some time like to hear from the chairman of that committee and see how that committee functions in relationship to the auditor.
Okay.
Thank you. Vice Chair Thrower?
Yeah, and it might be beneficial to actually hear from the internal auditor themselves, so.
Okay. We can.
Agreement. All right, great. We're getting to work. Okay. Any other questions, comments about the internal auditor? Representative Shaw.
Not about the auditor.
Okay. So we have our marching orders for the internal auditor for the next meeting, the presentation, and hopefully we can have the internal auditor for Hillsborough County also attend.
I'm
the next
sure she
meeting as
will.
well.
She will attend.
Thank you. Representative Shaw, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a similar request about the county administrator. And as I read this, it is pretty expansive what the administrator's office is responsible for. I would like some clarity as to exactly how it works and just kind of a summary of how that office works and all the stuff that they do and don't do.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Scalera.
So recognizing that time is short until August, as Mary Helen mentioned, I'm not sure the direction I need to go with this, but I want to get it out on the table, the discussion, so that we maybe can start collecting information. And Ms. Delaverne had mentioned it as well in terms of the representation through the county. My particular concern, and I'll bring it right out, is that if you look at the districting, and particularly in an area that I'm from in South Hillsborough County, it's not compact. It's not compact. If you recall, the District 1 district slides all the way down the coast and picks up Apollo Beach, while we've got Sun City Center and Waimama and Gibsonton and Riverview all east and in a separate district. People that have similar concerns that we have in Apollo Beach. And I know that we're not districting on this board, but I think to the extent that we can do something in the charter that will help the redistricting process, I want to make sure that we do it and that we get it underway. And the first thing that I thought of was, as a minimum in Section 4 of the charter, there's no discussion about compact districting. And maybe that's where this all goes in a simplified sort of form. Mary Helen, does that do enough to even kick off a discussion that we might take up later?
Oh, certainly. We used to be a pre-clearance, well, we're still a pre-clearance county, which means under the Justice Department, when we do a change affecting voting, that we have to submit that to the Justice Department prior to it being effective. What happened several years ago, the formula was created by the Congress in 1972. Somebody brought a lawsuit and they found that this formula was outdated. So we're still subject to pre-clearance, not because of discrimination, but because in 1972 we had a certain amount of Spanish registered voters and we did not print anything in Spanish. So in any event, but there are limits and some rules that you have to follow with redistricting, and I can give you some information on that would help clarify what it is. And I can also show you, because I did the redistricting in 2001 and in 2011. And the methodology we used was similar in both of those. So I can bring back that information for you, which might clarify the process that we go through.
Well, and keep in mind that I don't want to occupy this board's time with things that we're not going to be deciding, but to the extent that the charter can be affected, and in my original research that I've actually done for a couple of years to try to understand where this would ever go, it's been mentioned to me that City of Tampa uses the Planning Commission somehow in
Yes.
their process, and that process works pretty well. I don't have expertise in it. I don't know what that is. But if that's something that maybe the Planning Commission can assist with,
I have not spoken to the Planning Commission about taking on that, but yes, the City of Tampa uses the Planning Commission. The two redistrictings in 2001, 2011, the Board of County Commissioners decided, they wanted to do it themselves. So there was a group of staff, we had maps, we had meetings all through the county, and I can bring you back that information of how we proceeded. But there's nothing that would prohibit the Planning Commission or successor entity. We can do the language like that.
is that potentially a matter of the charter?
I think you could put it in the charter.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, drafting the language, because as a legislative drafter, you don't want to really say the Hillsborough County City County Planning Commission, because it may change down the road and we don't want to be out of date, but we could come up with something. I would suggest perhaps maybe talking to the executive director to see, what kind of impact that might have on their budget or what they do.
Can we go ahead and arrange for that if this board thinks that that's a productive route to go?
Sure.
Mr. Chair, I don't want to,
No, this is valuable.
okay. My suggestion would be that we get the executive director in to discuss that process.
Okay.
And then we can talk about whether it's appropriate for the charter or not.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to go to Ms. Stewart and then Representative Fick.
I'm certainly sympathetic with the gentleman's concern about South County. It's long been a peculiar district, to say the least. But I have a question of you, ma'am, and that is the Hillsborough County fell under the Voting Rights Act because they failed to publish their voting information in Spanish, and we had a certain percentage of Hispanic population, speaking population. But we're no longer under the Voting Rights Act. Is that not correct?
Technically, we are, but the formula has been thrown out, and Congress has not reestablished the formula to see if you are actually going to be triggered to be under Section 5 preclearance.
Okay. So, but we don't undergo the federal scrutiny as we once did, correct?
Correct. Now, there's still Section 2. I don't want to get down into the weeds here. There's still Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act that would not allow retrogression. So there's still guidance in case law and the Voting Rights Act that would guide you into how you do that. Do the redistricting. So it's not like we just have carte blanche, but we don't have it would take us basically like 4 or 5 months to get the submittal together, because once we change the single member districts, we actually have to have a legal description of the 4 districts and send that to the Justice Department along with all the meeting notices and all the maps and everything that we did. So
Just a comment of all the issues that reach the legislature or any other body, reapportionment is probably the most dear issue to them all.
Ms. Stewart, I apologize. I didn't speak up, but
That's
you're
quite all right.
recognized.
Yes, as Ms. Figg so aptly spoke, it is a highly political process. And I can tell you, I staffed it with her the last time, and no map that we ever drew ever saw the light of day on this Board of County Commissioners. They each drew their own maps. So compact and contiguous are not in their vocabulary. But we could put it in the charter.
Well, so I'm listening to the voices of experience, and but it's a matter near and dear to my heart and all those people down in South Hillsborough County. I'm not sure that most of the commissioners would disagree with the thought process, because for anybody that's ever looked at this district, it doesn't make any geographic sense whatsoever. So, to the extent that we can take a look at how the charter could affect it, and still leave the final apportionments to the body politic, then I think we should.
Well, it sounds as if we have a consensus. I'm taking away 3 sets of marching orders for the attorney and staff, and that's to, for the next meeting, have the internal auditor here with an opportunity to hear more about the history of the internal auditor office, as well as to have the county administrator's office further explained, and then to look at redistricting language within the charter as it currently stands, and to have a discussion about whether or not that should be changed.
Sure.
Anything that I may have missed under new business that anyone would like to bring up?
Could I
Yes,
just
Mr.
ask
Mueller.
a quick question? Do we need to have these people come in and, have all this information prepared? Do we have to do that by motion here, or is it fine by what seems to be consensus?
When you're directing us to do research and things of that nature, I'd rather have it a motion, because that way your minutes are clear that the board directed us to do this, just so that the record's clear.
Perfect. So we'll go back on all these issues. I'll go back to Representative Fig and ask for a motion, and then on the internal auditors, and then we'll go over to Representative Shaw and ask for the same about the county administrator, and then to you, Mrs. Scalera, on redistricting language.
It is Corolla.
Corolla.
That's okay.
Thank you.
We'll start
Like
there.
Corolla. Got it. Representative, you recognized.
I haven't thought this through, so it might be kind of rusty. I move that the board here have a review of the county auditor to determine whether their function is up to date.
It's good enough.
Is there a second?
Second that motion.
It's been properly seconded by Ms. Berry. Is there any discussion?
Just quick discussion. I thought I heard people saying that they wanted actual people to come here. I don't know if that was included in your motion or not.
No,
Okay.
that was not part of the motion, no.
Did
I
you?
believe that was Mr. Thrower's
Would you mind if I made
friendly amendment.
Of course not.
to include hearing from the internal auditor? And, oops, sorry. Would you mind amending your motion to include a hearing from the internal auditor and also the chairman of the audit committee?
Correct.
Okay.
Wonderful. So we have a motion on the floor that was properly amended, and it was properly seconded. Do we have any other unreadiness? All right. All in favor by sign up.
Sorry, Chair, does that include all supporting documents? Sorry, does that include all in supporting documents?
Yes, I will give that as background, and you'll get that ahead of time.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Wood.
I just want to make the point, I don't take those amendments as being limiting. I mean, I expect the discretion to be used, and so I don't want to limit it to just those items, correct? We all understand that?
That is correct. Okay. Are we ready for the question? All right. All in favor of Representative Fig's motion to have a presentation on the Internal Auditor's Department, as well as a presentation from the County Internal Auditor at the next meeting, by sign of aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. All right, Representative Shaw, you're recognized for your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to make a motion that the county administrator's office come and give us a summary as to their functions and discretion and duties, so that we could be better apprised of their role.
Second.
All right, we have a motion that has been properly seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I'm sorry. Would this be again next month? Because I'm wondering whether we're going to get to, the auditor may be a long discussion, and I don't know whether having both would be very lengthy. So I just didn't know if we needed to space these out month-wise or what. That's just a question I had.
My motion is not time sensitive necessarily, so
And it may depend on schedules and things of that nature, so we'll let you know what we can get scheduled.
Okay, that'll be great. And I think if we run into any issues at future meetings, we can also set a time certain so that we're out of here at a particular time if necessary. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Any discussion on the motion? All right, are you ready for the question? All in favor by sign of aye? Any opposed? Thank you, Representative Shaw. All right, Mr. Scorolla.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the board receive information from the county attorney's office with respect to the effect of the charter on redistricting, and specifically that this is not a motion for redistricting. It's a motion to understand the effect of the charter on redistricting, and hopefully within that, receive information from the Planning Commission on their utilization for the City of Tampa's work.
Great. You all have heard the motion. Is there a second? All right, we have a motion and a second by Dr. Fox. Is there any unreadiness? Any discussion? Yes, Ms. Dellenburn.
I have a question. I'm not sure whether it really applies to this, but I'd be interested just to know, you know, and may need to be something different, but the districts we've had such a huge population growth. Is there any way in this presentation just to get by the districts what the population is currently in each district?
Absolutely. I have that readily available.
Excellent. Any other comments, questions? Representative Figg?
Mr. Chairman, it might be more relevant to know where the voting population is and what the makeup of the voting population is demographically, and that, I'm sure, is easily obtainable from Supervisor of Elections Office.
All right. I see our deputy attorney shaking her head and taking her notes. Like she's
I'll
gonna
be
have
out
that.
there every day,
Awesome.
so I can get that.
All right. Any other comments before the vote? Are you ready for the question? All right. All in favor of receiving information to help us understand the language of redistricting and the effect on the charter and the impact that the Planning Commission could play in it by sign of aye? Any opposed? The motion is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, anything else for new issues? Great. We'll move along. We are going to swing back over to public comment. With us today, we have Mr. Ryan Barak. Did I get that correct?
Thank you.
Welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you. First, I want to congratulate you all and thank you all for serving on this very important board. My name is Ryan Barak, and I'm an attorney and a resident of Hillsborough County. I've been a board-certified labor and employment lawyer in this community for more than 22 years. I'm here today as a concerned resident to ask you to ask the voters to reestablish the civil service system in Hillsborough County. It existed until earlier this year when it was abolished. Civil service grew out of the good governance movement and was designed to combat cronyism, racism, and arbitrary decision-making. Unfortunately, last year, Hillsborough County eliminated its civil service system. That means that now there is no civil service system that protects the employees of Hillsborough County government or the constitutional officers. Prior to that action, Hillsborough County employees, like all of the neighboring governments, including Pinellas, Pasco, Tampa, St. Pete, all had civil service or personnel boards to hear the appeals of employees who got fired. We no longer have that here. We now have a private arbitration, mandatory arbitration system conducted by private arbitrators. The current system of forced arbitration uses private lawyers to make decisions based on a bizarre, confusing, and contradictory summary judgment procedures. The attorneys among you may understand what summary judgment is. We have the only system that I've ever heard of at this level that utilizes a bizarre summary judgment procedure. Under the prior system, the board heard about one appeal per month. Since the institution of this new system, there's only been one appeal period, which was decided on a summary judgment ruling. I submit to you, the county has not suddenly become perfect with the way they're interacting with employees. Instead, the new system is so unfair and arbitrary that employees aren't using it. The current system only requires the appointing authority to prove a single violation of any county rule, and the decision maker is not allowed to overturn the decision or impose a lesser discipline. There's a county rule that says you can't walk on the grass. If the county can show that an employee walked on the grass one time, the decision maker can't overturn that decision. If a county employee is late one time, the arbitrator cannot overturn that decision. The employees aren't supposed to use county resources for their personal benefit. If a county employee gets a personal phone call from their child who's sick one time, and the county decides to terminate on that, the decision maker is not allowed to undo that discipline or impose a lesser discipline. The county staff previously drafted a discipline appeal council, which was never presented to the Board of County Commissioners as an option. There used to be a provision in the charter which dealt with, may I have leave to continue?
What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair,
I move to allow him to continue.
I want to know what the relevancy is to the charter before we continue on this.
I can address that if you'd like, sir.
Okay, so can I have a motion to extend Mr. Barak's time?
I move to extend Mr. Brock's time.
I
By how
second that.
Stacy,
How many minutes?
By how long?
another 3?
That would be terrific. That'd be amazing.
Okay, we have a motion to extend Mr. Barak's time by an additional 3 minutes.
I'll second the motion.
We have a second by Mr. Wood. All in favor by sign of affirmation. Any opposed? Just 1, 2.
Thank you.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Sir, to address your question, in fact, the charter used to say that we were not, that it was not permitted to address civil service because there was a special act of the legislature. The legislature withdrew that special act. So now it is appropriate to be part of the charter because the special act, Hillsborough County originally had a special act, a Civil Service Act. That was abolished by the legislature. At the urging, let's be clear, at the urging of the Board of County Commissioners and the constitutional officers, because they didn't want anybody looking at their hiring and firing decisions. That's why they did that. And that is not serving the interests of the citizens of Hillsborough County. That is not serving the employees of Hillsborough County. That is not serving efficient or good government. Rather, what does serve efficient and good government is what all of our neighboring government entities have, which is a system that allows challenges to termination decisions. The standard that should be used is what's called just cause termination, which again is the standard that is universally used, except in Hillsborough County, where we use, under this new system, this bizarre standard that again does not permit the decision maker to impose any lesser discipline if the county can prove a violation of any county rule. So the reason why it's not currently in the charter is because there was a law that said it couldn't be. That law no longer exists, so now it can be and it should be. And really all it would take would be simple language saying that there is established a civil service system or personnel board, they call it a personnel board in Pinellas County, a personnel board system which utilizes a just cause standards. And I would be happy to confer with staff. They drafted up a proposal once before where it was called the Discipline Appeal Council, but there are a number of different ways you could describe it. But a system that allows employees to challenge their termination decisions is important. And one of the reasons why it's important is because people need to have a way when they think they've been treated unfairly to complain. You want to have the ability, you want to give your employees the ability, if they think there's been something done wrong, to come forward and say, hey, I think there's something that's been done wrong here. And without a system that effectively operates, they can't do that. And again, I did a public records request. There's been, since the new system has come into place, there's been one hearing held. It was held, and it wasn't even a full hearing. It was a granting of summary judgment. And what that means is the employee never actually got to tell their story. It was decided on paper, because in summary judgment, what happens is you submit a bunch of documents to the decision maker, and they make the decision based solely on the paper. So this employee never actually got to tell their story because it was decided on summary judgment. I'd be happy to come back before this board and explain in more detail. I only had kindly 6 minutes to discuss this. This is a real problem. We used to have something. We got rid of it. It's a shame. We should fix it.
Thank you, Mr. Barak.
Thank you.
I'm going to recognize Representative Shaw for a question.
You're asking this board to essentially reinstitute the civil service board. Is that what you're asking us to do by putting it in the charter?
Or some sort of decision maker that is in the nature of an impartial board made up of county citizens who review who those questions can go to. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Johnson, you're recognized for a question.
I just wanted to make sure I heard that right. You want citizens to be the decision-making body for a county disciplinary issue?
So that's, historically, there was a citizen panel, which part of the issue was it was appointed by the governor. The members of the panel who served were appointed by the governor, and I think that was part of the hostility towards it, is they were a gubernatorial appointee, as opposed to appointees of the Board of County Commissioners and the elected officials. So it would be in the nature of all of the other appointed boards that exist in Hillsborough County, like the Planning Commission, et cetera. So yes, it is, and the proposal that they had with the Disciplinary Appeals Council that staff had prepared, I believe had a 12-member panel, and then I think they used 3 members to make decisions. I don't think you need to get into that level of detail in the charter, and in fact, I would not encourage that level of detail in the charter. But what I would say is that there be a county citizen panel that exists to hear these appeals of employee discipline.
Mr. Scarola for a question.
So respecting this gentleman's position, I don't know if this board was interested in carrying this discussion on further. As a minimum, we should hear from the county administrator's office because they were the ones who were involved with making that decision. So we would need to hear their position on it.
Representative Shaw.
So yes, I'm certainly interested in hearing further about this. So I guess I would make a motion that we bring this up for discussion and we hear not only from you, but we hear from the county administrator about why this was done away with, and we get some background on the issue, but that would be my motion.
I second that motion, and I agree. I would like to hear more background about it, especially when it comes to the citizens of Hillsborough County and the employees and the representation. But I do have a question. Can I ask her?
The floor is yours, Representative.
The question. So currently, right now, you're saying that there is it's a board, or is it a lawyer appointed that's representing the employees or not representing?
So if an employee, currently under the system, if an employee chooses to challenge their termination, there is a list of arbitrators that the county gets from the American Arbitration Association. So these are lawyers who are arbitrators, and then they conduct a arbitration, and the arbitrator makes the determination. So it is not a board. There's, in fact, no requirement that that arbitrator be a resident of Hillsborough County, in fact. And those panels are historically, there's all sorts of data that suggests that those panels favor the repeat players, right? So the county is definitionally a repeat player because they continue to utilize the services of an arbitrator. The employee is only going there once, whereas the county is going to be going again and again. And that's one of the problems with mandatory forced arbitration, which is what that system is.
And who's paying for this?
The county pays for it.
Okay.
Ms. Bryant, you're recognized.
I would either like to make, I know there's a motion on the floor, so either make a separate motion or ask if this could be a friendly amendment to the motion that's on the floor to ask to have the county attorney's office also provide us a couple examples of other board models or other models that we could consider.
Okay.
I would be open to that friendly amendment.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion that has been amended? Are you ready for the question? All right. All those who are in favor of Mr. Shaw's amendment to get more information about the Civil Service Review Board at the next meeting by sign of aye. Any opposed?
I just want clarification, not necessarily.
Motion's carried. Right. We don't necessarily have to deal with, we've empowered the staff to go ahead and take a look at the agenda.
You said next meeting, so I
Yes.
just wanted to clarify.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Mr. Barak, wow. I don't know if anybody's going to get 6 minutes in front of us again. We do have to be careful of setting a precedent.
I want to apologize to this board. I didn't realize there was a hockey game, and so I've been circling looking for a parking space. I tried to get here early, but I apologize for that.
No worries at all. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chair, members.
All right, members, does anyone have anything for the good of the order before we adjourn? I'd like to just take a point of personal privilege to recognize Dr. Leanna Fox for receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award last month from the League of Women Voters. I think she's also in the Hall of Fame or Distinguished Alumni for HCC as well. So congratulations on that. All right. Well, with no further business, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.